Good evening. It's Sunday, the 5th of October. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Israel has criticized Sweden after Stockholm announced plans to recognize Palestine as an official state. The Palestinian Authority has applauded the decision. IBA's Margot Dukevich has this report.
Foreign Minister Victor Lieberman says he plans to summon Sweden's ambassador to discuss Stockholm's decision to Israel to recognize Palestine as a state, becoming the first European country to do so. The Swedish decision was announced during Prime Minister Stefan Löfven's inaugural address to the Swedish Parliament on Friday. The newly elected Prime Minister said his decision was based on the realization that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict must be solved with a two-state solution negotiated in accordance with international law. Lieberman said it appears the Swedish Prime Minister made a hasty decision without understanding the issue, noting it's the Palestinians who prevented progress being made towards a peace agreement with Israel.
We're sorry about the last statement of Prime Minister of Sweden. We think it's really a wrong approach because it's possible to achieve peace only as a bilateral solution. Any unilateral steps will be very, very counterproductive. We hope that at the end of the day, Sweden will support bilateral steps. Sweden will support bilateral talks between two sides, and we appreciate direct talks between Israel and Sweden before any statements.
The decision was lauded by the Palestinian Authority, with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas calling it great and honorable. Abbas says he hopes more countries will follow suit. Sweden's Foreign Minister Margot Wallström defended her country's decision, adding she doubts it will risk Sweden's relationship with Israel.
The Swedish government will recognize the state of Palestine.
Why?
Because we believe that this is an important step towards a two-state solution. We hope that this will inspire and hopefully give some new energy into the negotiations. And we, of course, know and expect that there will be both applause and criticism, but we will engage in a dialogue and in talks with our partners and other countries from both camps.
She said Sweden expects a number of countries, including the United States, will criticize the decision, but believes the move will help discussions on a two-state solution move forward.
We, of course, know that most countries in the world know the position of the Swedish Social Democratic Party, and that has been stated in one Congress after the other. This has been in our program. It was in the election campaign as a promise, and now it is in our declaration for this new government. So we will just simply follow up with a legal decision, but it will be prepared.
In 2012, the UN General Assembly approved the de facto recognition of the State of Palestine, granting it observer status but no official recognition. The coming days will tell whether other European countries will join Sweden's initiative. Margot Dukevich, IBA News.
It was a relatively quiet Yom Kippur fast day yesterday, despite fears of clashes in cities with mixed Jewish-Arab populations due to the overlapping Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha. We get more from IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
In Jerusalem on Judaism's most holy day, the streets were virtually empty. The pious worshipped and a few strolled in the afternoon sun in the boulevards, which are silent this one day of the year. Muslims celebrated Eid al-Adha with thousands worshipping at the Temple Mount mosques as Jews prayed below at the Western Wall. There were a few incidents of stone throwings in the city, but no one was injured and no damage caused. Police detained 2 teenagers in Ras El Amoud on suspicion of stoning Jewish homes, and a number of cars belonging to Arab residents were also damaged. In Tel Aviv, it was a different scene altogether. For many, this was the holiday of bikes, and residents and dogs alike took to the streets, devoid of traffic, to celebrate the sunny weather. Emergency services treated some 241 people over the holiday, most of them children and youth, suffering from bicycle, skateboard, and rollerblade-related injuries. 3 of them suffered serious injuries, including a 12-year-old boy who fell with his bike from the Henkin Bridge in Haifa. A toddler was also in serious condition after falling from a third-floor windowsill, and a young man who hit his head after falling from a scooter. This year, Magen David Adom was kept busy and evacuated over 2,000 people to hospital for injuries and dehydration. On an optimistic note, ambulances brought 116 pregnant women to the hospital to give birth. 7 couldn't wait and delivered babies along the way. In the north, there were a number of stone-throwing incidents in Tiberias, Perea, and Nahariya. No one was injured and no damage caused. Akko, which had been a scene of friction between Arabs and Jews in the past, was calm due to the efforts by religious leaders on both sides to defuse the tensions. Aria O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Israeli leaders are obligated to always seek peace with our neighbors, but they must never delude themselves as to the intentions of the nation's enemies. That's the view of Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon during his address at the Mount Herzl Military Cemetery at a service for the fallen of the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Ya'alon warned that from near and far, there are attempts to harm Israel in various ways, with threats coming in the form of rockets, missiles, terror, delegitimization efforts, and the development of nuclear weapons. The defense chief said that we must know how to fight back diplomatically as well as militarily, and told family members of the fallen that by returning to their lives of building and creating, they serve as examples to all. President Reuven Rivlin also spoke at the ceremony, saying that the failures of the Yom Kippur War were brought on by a lack of self-criticism, something that society must not let be repeated. Rivlin said that the Israeli leadership must be exposed at all times to difficult questions. Some 500 Palestinians aged 60 and over traveled from the Gaza Strip to Jerusalem today to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque for the Eid al-Adha holiday as part of an understanding reached between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. The measures are part of Israel's most sweeping easing of restrictions on the Palestinian movement since 2007. The worshippers are said to return to the Hamas-run enclave later today. The easements also include permission for a similar number of Gaza residents to enter Jerusalem on Monday and Tuesday, the last 2 days of the holiday. 500 Gazans will also be allowed to visit close relatives in the West Bank, while Palestinians from the West Bank will be permitted unlimited travel to Israel. Gaza will also be allowed to export agricultural produce to the West Bank, marking the first time since the start of the Israeli blockade in 2007 that Gazans will be able to sell local fish and vegetables in the West Bank. Reconstruction work in Gaza is moving very slowly, and some Palestinians face the prospect of winter without proper shelter. Several residents whose homes were demolished have been provided with prefabricated homes set up next to damaged neighborhoods, although because an estimated 60,000 homes were either damaged or destroyed, there are not enough prefabricated caravans to go around. Successful reconstruction depends on cooperation between the Palestinian rivals, Fatah and Hamas, as well as Israeli willingness to allow the entry of the necessary building supplies.
Israel has a legitimate security concern about the diversion of material, but I think it can work. And to say what we need is we need the national consensus government physically present so that that mechanism can start, and it needs to start soon. It's starting to rain already. The people are frustrated and angry, and they need to see progress. So we're hoping that there'll be very tangible, demonstrable progress on the ground soon.
Muslims around the world are today continuing celebration of the 4-day Eid al-Adha holiday as more than 2 million pilgrims participate in the annual Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia. Worshippers cast pebbles at a desert tent city in Mina, just outside the holy city of Mecca, in the symbolic stoning of the devil for the second straight day. Observant males shaved their heads as a sign of renewal, while women clipped locks of their hair. The holiday commemorates God's testing of Abraham by commanding him to sacrifice his son. That Muslim tradition holds to be Ishmael, but is believed by Christians and Jews to be Isaac. Because the Bible recounts that a sheep was ultimately sacrificed in his stead, contemporary observance of Eid involves the slaughter of livestock, and the meat is then donated to the impoverished. After his White House summit with U.S. President Barack Obama ahead of his return home in time for Yom Kippur, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a series of 6 interviews to American media networks. The Prime Minister used his widely touted public relations skills to outline the similarities between Hamas and ISIS, address the increasing dangers of a nuclear Iran, as well as building in Jerusalem.
The criticism was leveled, one, at a new neighborhood that was mixed. It had a substantial part of the apartments that a portion parceled out to Arabs, to Palestinians, alongside Jews. So it's why not have them live together? The second part of the criticism was actually baffling to me, because it criticized individual Jews who bought apartments in an Arab neighborhood. Now, Jews buy apartments, private property, in Arab neighborhoods. Arabs buy apartments in Jewish neighborhoods.
What if President Obama agrees to a deal with Iran that you say is unacceptable? What does Israel do?
Well, all I'll say is that Israel always reserves the right to defend itself.
The military option?
I don't go beyond
Take it
that.
out.
I'm the only Israeli who doesn't talk about military operations.
But you're the Israeli who has the ability to make it happen.
But I often don't talk about that. Hamas just threatened people. They executed their own people if they dared to protest what they were doing. Here's a photograph. This isn't of an impending execution during the recent operation. This isn't ISIS. This is Hamas. And this is what they did. They executed dozens of Palestinians in Gaza to impose their reign of fear on the people. Now, it's true they don't behead people. They put a bullet in people's heads. But to the victims and to their families, the horror is just the same. So that's what we're fighting. And that's what you're fighting too. You're fighting it in one front, we're fighting it in another front. And I think Americans by and large understand that. They understand that Israel and the United States are on the same side, and that these militant Islamists are not merely our enemies. I think they're the enemies of humanity.
And you think President Obama understands that?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Finance Minister Yair Lapid today defended the 2015 state budget, saying that it's not merely one of cutbacks, but that it also includes significant additions. Speaking at the beginning of a factional meeting of his Yesh Atid party, Lapid said that the budget for social services has received additional funds beyond the natural increase, with higher stipends for the elderly and improved medical care. The finance minister also claimed that the plan will lower the cost of living. The proposal includes reductions while increasing the state revenue by a total of 7 billion shekels, in addition to a 4.3 billion deficit to fund an increase in the defense budget. Turning to Syria, where fighting between Kurdish forces and Islamic State terrorists remains at a stalemate in the town of Kobani on the border with Turkey. ISIS shelled the town with artillery over the weekend, and its commanders are boasting that they will take the town within the coming days. The conflict is now overshadowing the wider civil war in Syria, prompting at least 180,000 mainly Kurdish residents in the area to flee into Turkey. Conquest of the Kurdish enclave is significant because it's part of the radical jihadist plan to lay claim to a vast swath of land from their self-declared capital in Raqqa on the Euphrates River all the way to the Turkish border some 96 kilometers away. The U.S. Navy has released video of aircraft taking off from the USS George H.W. Bush naval carrier in the Arabian Gulf en route to launching strikes against the Islamic State forces as part of efforts to halt their advance toward Kobani. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is estimating that at least 35 members of the brutal Islamic extremists were killed in the latest round of airstrikes in northern Syria, about 56 kilometers south of the border town. 5 other ISIS fighters were killed and one of its vehicles destroyed in other raids to the east and the south of Kobani. 10 Kurdish troops were also reportedly killed in the heavy fighting over the weekend. Outrage, condemnation, and grief over the ISIS murder of the 4th Western hostage is ongoing after a video of the purported beheading of 47-year-old British aid worker Alan Henning surfaced on the internet on Friday. The latest ISIS murder follows the beheadings of U.S. journalist Stephen Foley, dual U.S.-Israeli reporters Stephen Sotlov and Scottish aid worker David Haines. British Prime Minister David Cameron said that the absolutely appalling killing makes it clear that there is no level of depravity to which ISIS will not sink, and he is vowing to use all assets to do everything necessary to defeat the Islamist group.
The murder of Alan Henning is absolutely abhorrent, it is senseless, it is completely unforgivable. Anyone in any doubt about this organisation can now see how truly repulsive it is and barbaric it is as an organisation. And as a country, what we must do with our allies is everything we can to defeat this organisation in the region, but also to defeat it at home. And we must do everything we can to hunt down and find the people who are responsible for this. Alan Henning was a man of great peace, kindness and gentleness. He went with many Muslim friends out to do no more than simply help other people. His Muslim friends will be mourning him at this special time of Eid, and the whole country is mourning with them. Now, in terms of what we will do, we will use all the assets we have, as we have been up to now, to try and find these hostages, to try and help these hostages, to help their families, and do everything we can to defeat this organisation, which is utterly ruthless, senseless, and barbaric in the way it treats people.
Meanwhile, ISIS is now threatening to kill former U.S. Army Ranger Peter Kassig, who appeared at the end of Henning's murder video. The 26-year-old was abducted in Syria just over a year ago, where he was a humanitarian worker. Kassig was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army in 2007 after joining in 2004 in service that included deployment to Iraq. His Indiana-based parents have just released a desperate video plea for their son's life. Ed Kassig highlighted the aid work carried out by his son, whom he referred to as Abdul Rahman, the name that his son adopted after converting to Islam in captivity. Wearing an Islamic headscarf, Paula Kassig issued a personal message that she said she hopes her son will be able to see.
We know that the Syrians are suffering. We also believe violence is not the solution to the problems that trouble us all. There is so much that is beyond our control. We've asked our government to change its actions, but like our son, we have no more control over the U.S. government than you have over the breaking of dawn. We implore his captors to show mercy and use their power to let our son go.
Most of all, know that we love you, and our hearts ache for you to be granted your freedom so we can hug you again and then set you free to continue the life you have chosen, the life of service to those in greatest need. We implore those who are holding you to show mercy.
U.S. Vice President Joe Biden has apologized to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for saying that Erdogan admitted that his nation made a mistake to permit foreign fighters to cross into Syria. Diplomatic tension arose between the two countries after the vice president made his comments during a speech at Harvard University and alleged that Ankara was so determined to topple Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that it supported extremist groups, including al-Qaeda and the al-Nusra Front. Erdogan has vehemently denied making any such admission, and according to the White House, Biden apologized to Erdogan during a telephone conversation for any implication that Turkey or any other allies and partners in the region had intentionally supplied or facilitated the growth of ISIS or other violent extremists in Syria. The disagreement comes as NATO ally Turkey is expected to define the role that it will play in the U.S.-led coalition against Islamic State forces. Here at home, the Histadrut Labor Federation continued sanctions today in solidarity with postal authority workers who are battling imminent layoffs as part of a government efficiency plan. Employment service agencies across the country were shut down throughout the day, as were customs services at both the Haifa and Ashdod ports. Meanwhile, Israel postal employees escalated their sanctions, refusing to process packages from abroad, deliver registered mail, transfer vehicle ownership, nor receive payments for court, police, or local authority fines. Turning to sports, and the Israel Basketball League opens tonight with a marquee matchup between Maccabi Haifa and Hapoel Jerusalem that is a rematch between the semifinalists last season, won by Haifa 3-1. That put a halt to a promising season by the Capital Hoopsters, who are looking to build on their success from last season to finally win their first championship as they play in the new Payas Arena. Jerusalem believes it strengthened itself considerably by signing Donta Smith of Haifa to a 3-year contract. Smith helped Haifa to win its own first-ever title back in 2012 and led the team back to the finals this past season, when he also won the regular season MVP award. Tonight's game in Haifa will be broadcast live on Israel Television, Channel 1, starting at 8:50. Staying with basketball, and tonight in Cleveland, Maccabi Tel Aviv faces the NBA's Cleveland Cavaliers, coached by Israeli David Blatt, in a preseason game. In preparation of the match, defending European champions Maccabi held an open practice in nearby Beechwood, Ohio, in front of more than 500 fans. The matchup was arranged before Blatt left Maccabi and has taken on even greater significance now that he's become the first Israeli coach at the NBA and has added superstars LeBron James and Kevin Love to make the club a favorite to win the Eastern Conference. Maccabi is also slated to take on the Brooklyn Nets on Tuesday before returning home.
It's an incredible honor for our community, for our school district, for our kids to be able to see an international team of such high caliber, and you know, it's just it feels good. You know, the whole community coming together to support this event is fantastic. The community of Beechwood and the Jewish Federation in organizing this, it feels good right now, and I'm just so happy that we're able to host this event.
You know, a trip like this, we've been on the road for so long, and we're so far away from Tel Aviv. It definitely helps us to build as a team on and off the court. You know, we spend so much time with each other off the court, where we're in a hotel. You know, we eat together, we sleep together, and we basically we become a family. This is really what a team is about. You know, last year, you know, everybody will tell you individually we weren't the best team in Europe, but we found a way, and I think a big part of it was, you know, we had such a great group of guys, and off the court we grew as a family, and you know, we had each other's back to the end. You know, everybody was going to fight for each other. It wasn't like we were going to fight for ourselves. You know, we knew it was a bigger cause. And, you know, this is where it starts in training camp. So this right here is a big process in the long season we have ahead of us.
For those who like to stay up late, the Maccabi Cavaliers game tips off at 1 a.m. Israel time and will be broadcast live on Sport Channel 5. Taking a look at local finance, and with no currency trading on Sunday, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up across the board this first day of the trading week. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says we can expect fair conditions and a slight rise in temperatures tomorrow. Here's the forecast to home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this evening. We hope you'll join us again.